Hey, I'm Bryan Fenley, and making his appearance as a guest today is on-air talent and video producer for Sports Business Journal, Reginald Walker Jr. And our business on this conversation platform, Reginald and others who work in sports media, is not to go through and ask questions like I'm reading through your resume. We're going to stay away from that stuff. It's not about, well, how'd you get involved in sports? Why did you pick sports? That is not what we do here. We go beyond the surface here to really understand a person on a deep level. And I think we did that in a variety of different ways in this conversation with Reginald. So let's get to it. And before we start, if you feel so compelled, don't forget to subscribe. Here's my conversation with Reginald. He has had his fingerprints all over the sports media industry, from winning Emmy Awards at ESPN to being on camera, being a talent, broadcasting football and basketball. The list goes on. He also is a video producer at Sports Business Journal. Go check out their work. I am regularly consuming their content. He does more than just that. He's a great storyteller, and he played college football. We're going to share and get to know his story here on the On to Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley with Tennis Channel and other outlets. And Reginald Walker, as you know, this is a place where we're going to talk about your work, but we're going to go beyond that. So excited to have you on. Clearly, your roots are in Happy Valley, as I see in the stadium behind you. And I think it would be fair game to talk some football as well with you in your career. So looking forward to this conversation.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for having me. This will be fun, I think.
I think it is as well. And I think the first question, you're going to have fun answering it, because as we look at you and being at Penn State when you were a walk-on and you were playing running back and defensive back, what was the biggest hit that you ever sent out on a guy from a Penn State football practice?
It's funny. The best way to actually describe that is the biggest one might have been one that I received at one point, but I'll never forget. And I sort of love telling this story, and it helps because I just saw him a couple of weeks ago. Omar Easy was playing running back for us, and I was a freshman, and I'm playing corner, and we're in practice, first padded practice for me, and they throw a little ball out to him in the flat, and he's like, at the time, I think he was listed at like 6'3" or 6'4", like 245 pounds, and he was a running back. This was a guy that could run sub 4.6 in the 40. Okay. And it's just me and him in the flat. And I said to myself, I'm just going to lunge for his thigh and hold on, and hopefully help will come. And help eventually came. But that was my I always said that was my welcome to college football moment, welcome to the Big Ten moment. And then I wasn't, one of the things that's interesting is I as much of a hitter as I was in high school, because I hit some guys pretty good in high school, not so much in college. It was a lot harder, I learned, to get a clean shot on some guys because they can see you coming, their anticipation and those kinds of things. So that was always interesting to think, oh, I got a clean shot. I got a clean shot. It never really happened.
You had a clean shot in making the team. As a walk-on, though, what steps did you have to take to really see this dream through and play college ball from, say, what's different than somebody that was highly recruited and came on as a scholarship player right away?
Yeah, it was a different journey. You have to prove that you're worth the time in the spot, right? But the key for me was just understanding and staying right in terms of the playbook. Stay in there, understand what you're supposed to be doing. If you're in the right spot, it's not that difficult, right, to be a part of the team. If you're constantly in the wrong spot, it's real easy to be shown the door. And so my focus was to be in the right place at the right time, follow instructions, be coachable, right? And that's something I carry with me even in my professional life. If you're not coachable, what are you doing? Right? Because at the end of the day, none of us knows everything. I didn't know everything about football back then. I don't know everything there is to know about production now. But what I can do is when I'm in rooms and when I'm in circles is listen and learn. And one of the other things I love to talk about, right, is don't be afraid to get into a conversation because you just might learn something. And if you're quiet long enough and willing to take the information and process it, there's something you can learn from everybody in the room.
You take a lot of joy as well, Reggie, from being a junior and Reginald Walker Jr. and knowing,
Yes.
the presence that your dad has had on your life. So you talk about being coachable. How are you coachable when he was throwing things at you before college, before Penn State, when you're a child and you're soaking in all this information? What was a coachable looking like Reggie Walker Jr. at that adolescent stage?
Well, he'll tell you at times I was hard-headed and I wasn't coachable at all. But then there were times where I was, and I think what has happened over the years, and parents, and I'm not obviously, trying to tell people how to raise children, but you over time you realize things, and I get into conversations with my parents now, and I'll say certain things, and they look at me and they go, "Oh, you were listening the entire time. I had no idea you were paying attention the entire time." And so that kind of stuff actually rings in really true and really fun to see when that light goes off in their head. But listen, at times I gave my dad headaches. At times I made my dad really proud. But I think the thing that I take away from that, my mom too, right? They're super awesome. I love my parents. They're great people. But at times the thing that I always knew was they were going to be there, right? And my dad's retired Navy, and he's been everywhere. And there were times where I didn't know if he would make certain games. I didn't know if he was going to be able to make my football game or my basketball game. And sure enough, I go make a play and I hear a noise, or I hear that voice, and I turn around and look, and dad's standing at the fence, or dad's standing at the, at the end line on in a basketball gym, because he got there and he stood in a spot that allowed him to see what was going on and be there for me. And then so those two, man, like my mom, I'll tell on her a little bit. My mom wanted no part of me playing football. She didn't. Like, she would tell you no, she didn't. But she wanted to support me in what I wanted to do. And sort of the only rule that I kind of had and as a kid was, you're going to finish whatever you say you're starting. And that was kind of the main thing. And having those two there was always that support system I needed. And then I'd be remiss, man, I have to mention my sister, like, that she's the smartest person I know. And she's always trying to get smarter. Her perspective on things and her ability to understand where my sister is not a sports person at all. But I can bring up something in sports almost as a metaphor, and she'll process it. And then all of a sudden she turns that around and she's teaching me something about life with that information. And so that, like, being around her and being able to call her when I've got to figure stuff out, when it's about leading people or working with people or understanding a new task or understanding some different technology, I can call her. She's always got an answer. And I think for me, that's been really, really important, because what it's taught me is, and I mean this in a very loving way, know your resources. Know who you can call when something is maybe above your head or intellectually not where you think it's supposed to be. Know who to call. And oftentimes my call is my sister, because the answer comes through pretty loud and clear.
And she's going to tell it to you straightforward. It sounds like she's not going to sugarcoat it. She is going to tell you. Reggie Walker Jr. is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley here on the Onto Something podcast. So you talk about those who, and many others as well, but your inner core family and how supportive they are throughout your life and have been. When you think about your life and all the different things that you've done and accomplished, what feels right, Reggie, about where you are right now?
It's funny. I'm going to take you backwards and then bring you all the way forward. I look back on the journey and I think about a lot of things, and my mom always talked about, my dad always talked about education, all those things, but I'll never forget. I had gotten myself in a situation with Coach Paterno, and I let a grade slip or whatever the case may be. I can't even remember exactly what it was, but I found myself sitting in his office, and he looked me dead in the face. And this is Joe Paterno deadpan. He goes, "You don't have to play a snap of football, but you're going to graduate."
Wow.
And I told him, I was like, "Well, Coach, I'm going to do both." And he goes, "Yeah, well, one's non-negotiable." I'm like, "All right." And I knew which one it was. And so the day I walked across that stage and I knew I was a college graduate, that to me was the biggest and is the biggest accomplishment, because I did something somewhat unique. I did it in 4 years, right? That's sort of unique now. And I went to a place that I wanted to be at, that I really enjoyed, and I was able to do a lot of the things I wanted to do. I was able to do some things media related. I was able to put on that uniform, right? And I was able to build relationships and find the best friends that I would find in my life. And when you're able to do those things and you can put all of that together as one accomplishment, that stacks up there right there with the best of them. And when I go backwards and through my life and reflect, and that's one of the things I try to do consistently, is get 10, 15 minutes a day to kind of reflect on that day. How can I be better? Right. And that reflection time allows you to think about some of the decisions you made. Could I have been better with this? Could I have thought about this from that perspective? And it allows me to not regret, but learn, right? A lot of times we hear about, right, the concept of wins and lessons. You can never run out of either one of those, right? There's always something to be learned. And so for me, I take it all the way back to being able to graduate from a place like Penn State, and some of the relationships I built, some of the information that I was able to gain and ascertain, and that knowledge that's carried me forward, and some of the life lessons, right? And, you know, you talk about little things like working with people, right? I work in a business now. Sports Business Journal is I love working here, but I work in a place that is very collaborative. And if you can't figure out how to be a collaborative person playing college football, you will never learn how to be a collaborative person, because you have to trust the person next to you that they're going to do what they're supposed to do, and they are trusting you to do the same. And it's hard for some people to do, but when you can get to that point with a group of people, it really means a lot, not only to them, but also to you as you continue to grow in life.
And as you grow and you've accumulated all of these accomplishments, you talked about graduating and the idea of making Joe Paterno proud in doing such, making your parents proud as well. But Reggie, how do you separate making others proud, and how does that look different than what it takes for you to make yourself proud?
You know, what's interesting is, for me, I tell myself all the time, every show, every day is the next Super Bowl. And if I finish that day going, that show looked as good as it could look, we thought about as much as we could, right? Whether it's something like College Game Day, which I did for 3 seasons, and it was 3 of the best years of my life working with those guys. By the way, that entire crew, a bunch of really, really good, smart, hardworking people. But the thing that was very, very interesting to me, and what I take so much from it for, is the collaboration. Whether it was Chris Fowler's idea or my idea or anybody in between, I was in the Chris Fowler era. That tells you my age a little bit. Everybody's idea was heard. Everybody's concept was talked about, because any idea could turn into something better. I'm an analytical thinker. I'll tell anybody that. My strength is not creative. That's not my strength. I can take something and give you ideas and perspective on different directions that you can take, or things that you can add to it. That is my strength. My superpower is not coming up with these zany creative things that a lot of people can do. But the thing I've learned is I lean into those people because they make me better, and hopefully I make them better. So my mindset on making and creating something that I can be proud of is about, how do my teammates feel about what I bring to the table? Do they feel like I help when they need me to help, and I step back when they need me to step back? That's how, to me, when I go back and look at a day or a project or a show or a game, right? If I'm doing a game, that's the key for me. How did I integrate and work with my team to make sure we did our best to deliver whatever we could? One of the things that I focus on, really, especially when I'm broadcasting a game, I don't want to be the high maintenance analyst. I'm just not going to be that guy. And so I'm like, hey, what are you guys thinking here? What do you want to do out of the break? and I'll give my input, but I want it to be collaborative. I don't want to be the guy that's coming in there saying it's all about me and make me, or give me essentially what I'm trying to do. It's about making sure that people at home are, and my main thing is learning, right, from a broadcast. That's my main thing. That's why I got into this business, is as a football person, not that I'm a genius, but as a football person, my mindset was, I want to be able to teach people what it is that players and coaches are thinking and doing as they go through a game, and why they call what they call, why they execute what they execute. Because to me, that is how you add to the fandom of sport.
I love the way in which you put that together, Reggie, and playing off of the tune of the X's and O's and wanting to know what that coach is thinking as you're analyzing games in real time and during your broadcasts. Where in your life have you had the most impactful audibles where you thought you were going somewhere and then a pivot came and something new and even better came into your life?
Yeah, well, there are two that stand out the most. As a kid, I was a hooper, man. Like, I was trying to get buckets. That was my thing, right? And I did other sports too, but like hooping was really a thing for me. And then I got to ninth grade, and guys were like, "Hey, man, you should play football. Like, you're smart, you're fast, like you're pretty athletic. Like, you should play football." My junior year, I changed high schools, and I'm like, this basketball thing, I'm good. I'm a football guy now. Pivot, right? A big one. And then the second one was in college. I got to college. My mindset was, and this is I think you'll love this story. So I get to college. I'm at Penn State, and I'm like, I'm going to major in, I was going to go the business route. I was going to go marketing. And my whole plan was to be a sports agent. And the idea was, I'm going to play football here. Then I'm going to go play in the NFL for 10 years, right? Everybody thinks they're that good. And then I'm going to be everybody's agent forever. And then I go and I take a labor and industrial relations class, and I did well in the class. And I remember at the end of the semester, I went, there is no way in hell I'm doing that the rest of my life.
Wow.
Studying contracts, I'm not doing that. I want to be around sports, but that is not it for me. That's a whole lot of not movement, right? I wanted something that gave me a little bit more energy. And I'm not saying that it's not a great career or not an energetic thing, but for me, it didn't hit, right? As they say, it didn't hit the way it was supposed to hit. And so I talked to some people and ended up changing my major and jumped into the broadcast world, because talking to people about it and getting a better feel for what I would be able to do and what I would be able to learn, it hit different. And when it hit different, I said, this is where I got to go. Like, that over there, that agent thing, that was cool, but nah, this hits different. And it allows me to definitely stay in the stadium, right, around football as much as possible. And so those pivots were huge. And then the third pivot, which happened more in my professional life, look, I was at ESPN for 12 years as a production assistant, AP, producer, segment producer, all the things, right? I did a whole bunch ran the gamut of those roles. And then I got laid off, and I was like, yo, what am I going to do? And you know what I did? I spent some time looking in the mirror. Wow. And what I found in that mirror was, you've always wanted to call games. Go do that. And so the first thing I did is I started reaching out to everybody I knew in Charlotte. And I got my start doing high school games on a stream on Friday nights in 2017, while I also coached JV football while I was out of work. And that was really what got me started. And the rest, as they say, is history. And I've been doing games ever since. And it's the highlight of my falls every year. I love football. I love watching football, but I love being in that booth just as much. And, you know, this past season, you know, September, October, November, if you will, of 2022, 15 high school games, 14 college games, all in that one fell swoop. And so it's come full circle, and it's been great for me. And that's probably the greatest pivot, just because at this point in my life, it's the one that sustains me the most.
Where do you feel like, and that's such a beautiful story, where confidence played a big part in this, where here you are and you're laid off and you're looking to figure out what's next for you. And then to go into places where you have to prove yourself and to start over again and to think, not to start over again, but you're rediscovering and taking your career in a different way than maybe it had gone previously. The confidence that you needed, the self-belief, how would you categorize those two characteristics to help you navigate this newest chapter of your life?
I'm gonna start with the people, and I talked about my family already, but I'm getting ready to name 4 or 5 or 6 people that are very, very integral into me being in the booth. Sean Salisbury, Trent Dilfer, Tom Luganbill, Charles Arbuckle, Kevin Carter. If I don't name those people, Mike Bellotti, if I don't interact with those people and work with those people on shows like NFL Primetime, on shows like College Game Day, Kirk Herbstreit as well. I cannot leave Kirk or Desmond Howard out either. If I don't work with those people and talk football with those people, and they look at me and say, "Hey man, you can talk this with anybody. Don't feel like you can't talk ball with me. You know enough ball to talk ball with me." If you don't have people like that, those guys we know they're up here. Everybody knows who they are. They had long NFL careers. They're doing games. They're doing shows. All of these things. They coached at a high level. If you don't have people like that are able to help you understand, and I'll say it this way, how good you are, right? Because I didn't know. I didn't think. I didn't feel like I was on a level. I felt like I knew football. But until you get around some people like that we know are on a level, and they look you in your eye and say, "Hey, man, you should be just as confident as anybody because you know what you're talking about." If it's not for those people, it does look different. That confidence it is more of a battle to feel like I'm good enough, to feel like I know enough. But when I can be around people like that and just talk football and they understand where I'm coming from, and hell, the crazy thing is a lot of times they agree, right? And you're talking about guys that have done some amazing things. You look at a guy like Kevin Carter, 14 years in the NFL, never missed a game. And that dude tells me, "Hey man, you know ball like me. Let's talk ball." What? Are you kidding me? That gives you a level of confidence and understanding for a guy that, right? I'm not a guy that most people know of played in the NFL or is a household name for what he did on a football field. I'm not a guy that, might have my jersey retired by an NFL team. That's not me. But to talk to those guys and be able to talk football with them, and they look at me and they go, "You could be doing just what I'm doing, but instead you're working with me, teaching me how to deliver my knowledge to the TV screen," because it's a little bit of a different language. To be able to work with people like that, it really lifts you as a person because they know what they're talking about. If they, as the story goes, right? And let's use rap music as an example. If Jay-Z co-signs you, you're good. Well, those guys co-sign me, at least to me, which tells me, "Hey man, I'm pretty good at this."
You've heard it from them, but knowing you're good, knowing you're worthy, knowing your value, and I'm not just talking about in the booth, but in all walks of life, to know that you have it, that you're good enough, because we have negativity through our heads all the time. We second guess ourselves and decisions we make, whether it's work wise or life wise. But what has that personal journey been like for you? You have all of these supportive people around you, whether it's from a football standpoint, media standpoint, business standpoint. For you then to get to a point, Reggie, where you can say not only that you're grateful, because I know that gratitude is a big part and arm of what you're all about, and that you're content and excited about what you're doing from all the different projects, but to be in a place where you know that you feel good and that you're worthy, and not just for others to say it, but for you to really believe that. How long has it taken you? What's that journey been like for that to settle in with you, and not just sports, but in all aspects of your life?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it's at times it's a battle, and I'll be honest. Listen, I was a defensive back, right? So with that comes a little bit of arrogance, right?
Yeah.
An air of confidence that's borderline out of control, but also it's learning from failure, and being not afraid to fail. Um, Failure makes you learn, and because I have failed at things, or because I have not been the best on the air the first time, going back and being willing to look myself in the face and say, that wasn't good enough, and knowing and understanding and being willing to work at it and take the information that comes outwardly within, and look at it and use it as fuel, that's helped as well. But I will tell you, I guess some people would tell you I'm a pretty good actor, because the first time I got in a broadcast booth, I was scared to death. I just knew I was going to screw it up. I wasn't going to let anybody know that. And so the ability, I guess the easiest way and the most direct way to answer that question is the ability to compartmentalize and just do the task in front of me has been a really big piece of my confidence, because if I block out the thought of everything else, that allows me to have more confidence. And then the other thing is, and I learned this in working in TV more than anything, always have a plan, right? What am I going to take out of this show if I get heavy? What am I going to take out of this show if this conversation is really good? If you always have a plan and you're thinking about contingencies, your confidence is high, because you're never concerned about, if something goes awry, what am I going to do? And I think those are the main reasons why I've been able to be confident in what I've done and be able to continue to take on things as they come to me. And then the other thing is being where my feet are. You have to really do a good job. It's hard, right? I talk a lot, when I'm doing games, about understanding the moment as a player. Just run the play. You can't think about the next play or the play, just run the play. And I try to keep myself in the play. And as long as I'm in the play, I'm in good shape.
So you're living in the present moment, and that's what's important. But when is it okay? Do you allow yourself to say, it's actually in my best interest to stay away from the present moment and go into the future, like you were talking about, which is it's interesting, because being in the present moment is important, but then being in the future is also, and looking ahead is important, because you talked about the different plans that you've had. And so dealing with the audibles, as we said earlier, and then the past has shown you how far along you've come and given you those life lessons and those stories. What about you, Reggie, have you not shown us yet?
Um, and maybe this is that, right? This is the athlete in me. I probably can show I guess the quote softer side, the more vulnerable side, a little bit more. Um, this is going to sound really weird. I'm a fairly emotional person in a way, but I'm very businesslike as well. And I sort of pride myself on remaining flat when I need to be flat. I don't let myself get out of control. And I think that's something that I'm proud of. But sometimes you got to wear it a little bit on your sleeve, I think. I don't do that a lot. And the other thing I would say that people haven't fully seen from me in my career, I think I can lead more than I have. I think I can galvanize people, bring people together. I love to work with people and help them develop and add skills. And that's a major thing for me. Like one of the things I say all the time, and I talk about this a lot in football in particular. when you talk about a player developing. My thing is, development is not that you come into the league, let's say it's the NFL as a quarterback, and you're completing 52% of your passes, and the next year you're completing 62% of your passes. That sounds good to most people. But are you throwing the same pass?
Yeah.
Or are you adding pieces to the route tree that you can be more confident in completing? What are you adding to your game? If you're a post-up player, right, can you add the face-up jump shot in basketball? If you're a guard that's a pure shooter, can you add the ability to attack the basket and make plays going downhill, getting to the rim? That's development. That's adding to your game. And what I try to do every day is figure out, how can I add to my game? And so for me, when I watch games and I think about how I'm preparing for mine, how much film do I watch? Do I need to watch a little bit more? Do I need to talk to additional coaches? How many assistants could I get my hands on, or for lack of a better term, get on the phone, right? How many different ways can I establish the maximum amount of information as I get ready to discuss these two football teams? How can I add to my game? How can I add what I bring to the table? And as long as we're adding, we're never subtracting, and there's always something we didn't show to the rest of the world.
One of the things, and I love what you said there as well, is that you said plucking a bit from early in that last comment from you is getting more in touch with your sensitive side.
Yeah.
Given the way in which you operate, when you are able to get into that headspace, why do you feel like it can be so hard to? And when you do, what is it that you learn when you're in touch with those emotions and you're in a place that it seems like you want to be more in more in the know of and closer with?
I think it allows me, what it does more than anything, it grounds me. It allows me to understand that everything and every day can be more than just that list of things that I have to get done. I think that kind of stuff is important, but when you can really compartmentalize and get away from my everyday tasks and just be me for a few minutes, it's really effective, and it really allows you a chance to grow. It really allows you a chance to get in touch with you. One of the things I've talked about a lot, right? We just, the pandemic. Everybody's at home. And I'm like, you know what? I like hanging out with me. I actually like me. I'm pretty cool. And I'm not saying other people didn't like themselves, right? But what I learned was that as much of a, I guess, sort of social person that I am, I'm good at home. I'm good in my own space. I'm good in my own world to think about my own devices and really just sort of process who I am. And look, there are days, it's so funny. There are days where I'll think about things and I'm like, wait, like, should you think about that because you're older, right? Like thinking about some of the smallest things. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not 22. Should that even cross my mind? And then there are other days where I'm like, yeah, I'm not quite at that age where I'm like retiring, but why am I thinking about doing nothing and just being retired? Like you get those opportunities to go here and there. And when you have that sort of openness with yourself, I think you can learn a lot. And I think none of us knows everything about everybody we know. But the crazy thing is, I'm not sure we all know everything about our own selves.
Wow.
And that's a cool journey to stay on your whole life.
That is hard hitting. And as we wrap up this conversation, Reggie, in you finding that time and that comfortability to sort of understand yourself on a deep level in a business where it seems like people are fed by the validation they get from others. Look at me, look at me. To really experience a joy and a purpose for what you're doing in the business is to feel that yourself. Outside of all of the other great exposure and validation that you might get from colleagues or people who watch your content, all of that stuff. But it starts with you. And if it starts with you and you're able to, as you talked about, get to that place where you're grounded and centered, I look at what you're doing and there's an untapped potential that you have so much still to do. And it's just been so fun to watch and listen to your perspective here, because just to hear the way in which you think, you actually answered one of my questions, because one of my first questions was going to be what type of thinker you are. And ultimately, I think we got into the mind of who you are and beyond that. So Reggie, thank you so much, man. This was an absolute blast.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate it. And I think one of the things that I want to leave everybody with one thing, especially if you work and, well, we all essentially live in an environment where there are other people contributing every day. Have a 1 for 5 mentality. Give up, take away from yourself, work that 1 extra minute and save the next person 5. If you'll give 1 to give somebody else 5, I'm telling you right now, if we all think that way, it gets a lot more easy and it gets a lot more efficient for all of us.
I'll finish off with this. I know that when you were playing basketball, when you were on the court, you were shooting better than 1 for 5. Reggie Walker Jr., I'm Bryan Fenley, video producer at Sports Business Journal. Hey, maybe there was a dunk or a three-pointer thrown in there, or a couple of them back in the day, many of them to say the least. I'm Bryan Fenley. Reggie, this was so much fun, man. Thanks again for doing this and going beneath the surface, because these are all about, being deep in the conversations, and we really were able to do that. And thanks to you for your brilliance and your just powerful insights.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.